Carol.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And for more on this, let's bring in Democratic strategist Howard Franklin and Erich Reimer of Nueva Horizons. Guys, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, Eric, I have to ask you, do you think that this is a risky strategy for the president? Jeff Locke just explaining, we've already had 200 plants close. You now have coal-fired plants, and that's only 40% of energy production in the country, and it's continuing to go down with wind and solar, and nat gas is cheaper. I mean, do you think that this is really the right fight for the president to actually, do right now? Because it's got to end up in court.
I mean, I think we all understand the importance of renewable energy as well as alternative sources such as natural gas and et cetera. And I mean, I think we all understand too that coal definitely is declining. However, I think this is less about artificially propping up the coal industry. It's more about removing the artificial regulations that have constricted it over the past few years so it could compete more openly in the free market without being. We saw during the past few years how various regulations have targeted coal specifically to try to push it down and go in favor of renewables and whatnot. And I think that definitely this is going to be fought. I mean, certainly some states already said they're going to have lawsuits and whatnot over it, and
Well,
there is
sure.
some legal uncertainty.
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up with Howard. We've got 27 states that actually challenged President Obama back in the day. It seems that a lot of these states, it's not that they're against cleaning up the air, cleaning up pollution, but they want to be the ones to be in charge of that. These attorney generals feel like they have a better handle, Howard, on how their state can handle emissions and a reduction in greenhouse gases.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the federal government acted in this case because state governments weren't going to act. And obviously, having some consistency across the board in terms of policy for clean air, emissions, greenhouse gases, et cetera, just puts everyone on a level playing field. So I think there is plenty of reason for the federal government and the Obama administration to act. And I would just challenge the idea that regulation is the reason that coal has fallen behind. I think America's lost something like 100,000 coal mining jobs in the last decade, and that has little to do with regulation, much more to do with technology and cleaner, faster, cheaper renewable energy that's been, hit a critical mass.
You know
at
what,
this
Howard?
point.
I'm glad you brought that up because we actually have a graphic we can show our viewers to look at U.S. coal consumption. This has been happening for years and years and years because, again, nat gas is cheaper, solar and wind, which a lot of money has been invested in those things. If you look at the consumption from 2005 to 17, huge differential. And also, to be fair, Eric, I mean, the jobs aren't really there anymore. I realize the president's going to West Virginia. That's coal country. But it's now about 53,000 workers. It was at 90,000 workers in the industry just a while ago. So that base, to use that word, is actually shrunk.
I mean, it's definitely true, and certainly in the long term, I'm sure coal will in the next decade see even greater shrinkage. However, the fact is, for the moment, as we transition to other sources of energy, there's no need to, push these workers who otherwise have very little options in training at the moment to suddenly find themselves out of work and et cetera. And so I think by adopting a slower, more gradual approach, that's going to, be easier for the workers involved, easier for the market itself to transition, and I think be better overall for the economy as
Howard,
well.
I want to play you a soundbite from Hillary Clinton during the campaign and listen to what she said, which some say kind of hurt her about the coal industry. Listen.
We're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
Well, Howard, it didn't really work that way.
No, it didn't. I mean, two things to note or worth noting there. One, Hillary Clinton had little to do with putting a lot of coal miners out of business, but they're still going out of business, as I think we've heard.
Right.
A number of the power producers are still having tough times facing competition. But secondly, it's never advisable to relish in Americans' defeat, right? I think that might have been just a tactical error by the Clinton administration, right? You don't want to see anyone lose a.
Yeah,
that's right.
Before I let you go, I don't have a lot of time, but I want to ask you both real quick. A different topic, Howard. What do you make of this move by several very powerful Democrats like Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand to abolish ICE? That seems to be what they want to use come midterms as the Dem rallying cry. Do you agree with that as a platform for the party right now?
I don't think it's being messaged properly. I don't think that abolishment of ICE is something that most Americans are looking for or willing to vote for as a party platform. I mean, I think it may work really well in Democratic primaries, but not so much in general elections. I do think it's calling attention to ways in which ICE could be more compassionate and maybe even more effective, obviously, with reuniting families who've come across the border illegally. But I don't think abolishment is necessarily the tone that Democrats want to strike.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
not all. It's just a few. Eric and Howard, I wish I had more time with you guys. Thank you so much, though, for being here this morning. Great discussion. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Another discussion on tap because Google is now getting slapped with a privacy lawsuit.
Tracy Carrasco's got that story and other headlines this morning. Good morning again, Trace.
Good morning. Yes, following that Associated Press investigation, there's now a lawsuit against Google accusing it of illegally tracking the movements of millions of